Hello, welcome back to JD Science Prep. Today we are discussing some limiting reagent practice problems. I do have a past video on limiting reagents with a little bit of a lesson, so if you need to go back and watch that, go ahead and do that. And of course, as always, if this video helps, please like and subscribe. So in these practice questions, if at any point you need to pause and try something on your own, go ahead and do that. But let's get into number one. So in the reaction between 3 grams of aluminum and 3 grams of hydrochloric acid, the question asks what would be the limiting reagent? So because these are stoichiometric calculations, the first thing that we are going to do is just balance this equation. So let's go ahead and do that. So I can put a 2 in front of AlCl3, and if I have that, I'll need a 6 in front of hydrochloric acid and a 3 in front of hydrogen, and finally a 2 in front of aluminum. So with these limiting reagent questions, we are going to pick one product and we are going to see how much of that product each reactant can make. So this is going to be my picked product. I'm going to pick hydrogen gas. So first off, I'm going to go from 3 grams of aluminum 2 moles of hydrogen and see how much hydrogen is made. So with that, I'm going to go from 3 grams of aluminum. First, I need to get 2 moles of aluminum, so I'm going to divide by its molar mass, which I have already. If you need a hand with calculating molar mass, watch my previous video on that as well. So now I need to go from moles of aluminum to moles of hydrogen. Remember, I get that from our coefficients from our balanced equation. So I'm going to have 3 moles of H2 on top and 2 moles of aluminum on the bottom. And if you throw that into your calculator, what you should get, 3 grams of aluminum can make 0.167 moles of H2, and because it's only asking for the limiting reagent, I'm not going to worry about significant figures here. So we have went from grams of one reactant to moles of H2. Now I need to go from grams of my other reactant to that same product in H2. So I'm going to start off with 3 grams of HCl, and I'm going to go from grams of HCl to moles of HCl. So I will divide again by the molar mass, which again I have written up top here. So 36.46 grams of HCl for every mole of HCl. And finally, I will go from moles of HCl to moles of H2. And remember, that is the step where you use those coefficients. So I have 3 moles of H2 over 6 moles of HCl. And once you type that into your calculator, what you should get is 0.0411 moles of H2. So because hydrochloric acid makes less hydrogen gas than aluminum, that is my limiting reagent. Hydrochloric acid limits this reaction. Okay. All right, let's move on to number 2. So this question is asking for a little bit more information. Let's read through it. What it says: for the reaction between 3 grams of calcium carbonate and 3.5 grams of hydrochloric acid, what would be the limiting reagent? And question 2 of this example is what mass of calcium chloride would be made? So again, the first step here is to balance this reaction. So I'm going to start off with a 2 in front of HCl, which means I need a 1 in front of water. And I believe everything else is 1s. Let's just make sure here. That looks good to me. So reading the question here, looking back at number 1, we just picked any old product to compare how much of that our reactants makes. But here, the question specifically asks for calcium chloride. So CaCl2 is going to be my chosen product. That just makes my life easier. So let's go ahead and do that. So first off, let's start with 3 grams of CaCO3, and we eventually just want to get to moles of CaCl2. So let's start off by dividing by our molar mass. So we have 1 mole of CaCO3 on top, and for every 1 mole, there's 100.09 grams of calcium carbonate. That's conversion 1. Conversion 2, we're going to moles of CaCl2. Remember our balanced equation, those coefficients, those help us in this step. So we have 1 mole of CaCl2 for every 1 mole of CaCO3. And if you type that into your calculator, what you should get is 0.02997 moles of CaCl2. I'll just write it down here. All right, that is step 1. We need to do our other reactant though. So let's go ahead and start at 3.5 grams of HCl. We're going to follow the same steps here to figure out moles of CaCl2 from our 3.5 grams of HCl. So we'll have 1 mole of HCl on top, and we are dividing by the molar mass of HCl, so 36.46 grams of hydrochloric acid. And now this is where we're going to get into our moles of CaCl2. So we have 1 mole of calcium chloride for every 2 moles of HCl. And again, I got that from our balanced chemical reaction, or chemical equation. And if you type that into your calculator, you get 3.5 grams of HCl can make 0.0480 moles of CaCl2. So now we have what both reactants can make for our chosen product. We need to then figure out our limiting reagent. So comparing this number as well as this number, it looks like calcium carbonate makes less calcium chloride than hydrochloric acid. Therefore, that is our limiting reagent. So if we want to figure out the maximum amount of CaCl2 made from this reaction, we need to use our limiting reagent. So I can go the amount of moles that CaCO3 makes, I can start with 0.0297 moles of calcium chloride and just convert that to grams of calcium chloride, and that will be the maximum amount that this reaction can make because of the limiting reactant. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to start with what I calculated here. So we have 0.02997 moles of CaCl2, and all I need to do to convert to grams of CaCl2 is multiply by its molar mass. So we have 110.98 grams of CaCl2 for every 1 mole of CaCl2. And if you type that into your calculator, in our final answer, remember we're going to keep significant figures, you should get 3.3 grams of CaCl2. Okay, so that is a quick overview and a couple of examples for limiting reagents. Again, if this video has helped, please like and subscribe. Thank you very much.